Welcome to the conversation on TYT. I'm Michael Shore, and today I am joined on the conversation by Hector Oseguera, who is running for Congress in the 8th District of New Jersey. Hector, thanks for coming onto the conversation. You know, the first thing I want to know is the first moment you knew that this was the year to run. You're running a primary as a Democrat against a pretty well-entrenched member of Congress in Albio Sirius. When was the eureka moment that I am going to run for Congress?
Well, Michael, thank you so much for having me on. Definitely that moment for me is when I saw a picture on Valentine's Day of my congressman standing next to noted war criminal Elliot Abrams, who is currently Trump's ambassador of regime change to Venezuela. This is a man who was convicted in Iran-Contra, a man who helped fund the training of right-wing death squads in Nicaragua during the 80s. For the Reagan administration. And when I saw that image, I knew that my representative was no representative of my community.
It's interesting. You know, I love that question, not just because I asked it, but I love it because you really get the essence of what makes someone run when you know the moment they decided. And it says so much about the candidate when they're moved because they see an association with Elliot Abrams. It was such a divisive figure, and like you said, a convicted war criminal, actually convicted war criminal. But let's, and that's the moment, and that's interesting narrative. I want to talk to though a little bit about your history, and that you have been fighting corruption for much of your young life, professional life, and you weren't someone who came to money laundering because Ozark is on the air right now. Fighting money laundering is something that's been a part of your professional DNA. Dumb it down for me, though. What is money laundering? Because a lot of people know it's bad, but they don't know what it is, and why is it going on, and why is it something on which to say I want to be in Congress.
Great. So money laundering, to sort of bring it down to the basis level, is when criminals try to hide the proceeds of their criminal activity. So if you were to rob a bank, if you were a high-end drug dealer, you tend to not take the proceeds of your illegal activity and walk into a bank and say, I'd like to deposit this money. You actually have to find another way of bringing those illicit proceeds into our financial system. So what
that was my big mistake, by the way, Hector. That was a huge mistake I made.
Which was? I
just went in back in. It was a huge mistake. I robbed a bank and I brought it right back to the bank. It was.
Oh man, you should have called me first, man. Come on. Yeah. You got to get a professional on your side. So if you're a high-end criminal and you're making a lot of money off your criminal activity, you tend not to walk into a bank with a bag of money like in Scarface and tell the teller, I'd like to deposit this money. The way that they usually go about it is that they will go to a place like Panama, they'll go to a place like the Cayman Islands, they'll go to a place like Cyprus, and they will create shell companies. They'll create LLCs in Delaware, which are very easy to create, in Arizona, where they're very easy to create, and they will create companies that essentially don't do anything other than hide the fact that the money that created this business entity is actually a shell company that is being used to bring illegal money into our financial system. So at a previous firm, I directly handled the investigation of the Panama Papers, which was a huge scandal where people found that a law firm in Panama was being essentially only used to create fake business companies that would then be used to bring illegal money into our financial system.
I see. So, I mean, it does have wide-ranging implications, and it's clearly, you're an anti-corruption candidate, and it's clearly a centerpiece of corruption. More toward what are issues that are being talked about today, and immediately, you started the Cancel Rent New Jersey, or NJ, hashtag in New Jersey. You started it this month, and there are so many people in your state suffering right now. What is it that COVID creates as an opportunity for somebody fighting to get into Congress?
Well, what COVID has done is it's really leveled the power differential that tends to exist between incumbents and challengers like me. Because at a time like this, the incumbents are just as powerless as the rest of us in addressing the problems that normal everyday people face. So 70% of my district is made up of renters. A lot of artists, a lot of freelancers, a lot of gig economy workers are here in the 8th district, and they need true economic relief from what is going on all around us. People are out of work, people can't pay their rent, people don't know where their next meal is going to come from. So it's at a time like this that mutual aid work has become so important, that social media campaigns like the one that we launched for Cancel Rent New Jersey become important, because this is the only way that we get to bring to light the suffering that is by no stretch of the imagination new, but it's exacerbated by this tremendous crisis that we're all living through.
And your opponent, has your opponent taken any position on that, on canceling rent, on doing things for these 70% of people that he represents in Congress today who are renters?
So my opponent is an incredibly bland Democrat, and he loves to say his most common public statement is, "I join my colleagues in," and then whatever is going on. So, of course, he put out a press release saying, "I joined the entire New Jersey delegation in fighting for relief for the people of New Jersey." He, of course, would say that he is for canceling rents or providing some sort of rent relief to the people of the district, but he actually hasn't done anything to make those proposals a reality.
If Nancy Pelosi, at the beginning of the next Congress in January of 2021, meets Hector Oseguera as the new representative from the 8th District in New Jersey, what is she going to find in him as a partner and as somebody who she's going to have squabbles with?
When Nancy Pelosi meets me in January of 2021, she will find a fighter for working class values in the Democratic Party, somebody who is not going to be taking corporate PAC money, and so will not be afraid of fighting corruption. She will meet somebody who doesn't take fossil fuel money, and so will not be afraid to champion strong environmental regulations like the Green New Deal. She's going to find somebody who does not take money from the insurance or the pharmaceutical industry, and so is unafraid of fighting for things that people in my district need, like Medicare for all. What she's going to find is somebody who will be out there, who will be making noise, and who will be fighting for the things that working class people need in this district.
You talked about Medicare for all. We've gone through a Democratic primary, a very odd Democratic primary. Started with so many people, ended in the middle of a pandemic. But Medicare for all was talked about a lot, and it didn't elect a nominee. Why is that, and what has to be different about the way it's sold next time?
Currently, we don't have a healthcare system in America. What we have is a sickness management system in America that thrives off profits for large pharmaceutical and insurance companies who don't ever really care if the people who are subject to that system get better or are healthier in an absolute sense. What we need to fight for with Medicare for all is a system that is affordable when it comes to prescription drugs, that actually prioritizes the health of the people who are subject to the system, much less so than creating exorbitant profits for industries like the insurance or the pharmaceutical industries, which is what our healthcare system has been for such a long time.
Is this time, does it make it very, very difficult to run for Congress, no less in a primary?
This pandemic has leveled the playing field. In a normal circumstances, there would be a tremendous power differential between the powers that be and insurgent challengers like myself. Right now, my campaign has completely moved to a digital first strategy. So we're reaching out by phone banking, by text banking, by emailing people across the district. My opponent has a fairly pathetic digital campaign. He doesn't have his own website. Anybody who's watching now, I encourage you to go to albiocrires.com right now and tell me what you see. My opponent has absolutely no sense of what it is like to campaign under these conditions, because nobody does. We've never lived through something like this. So at a time like this, it's my generation that is comfortable with technology, that has a good grasp of what it means to run a digital campaign, that is actually put it in advantage. So if anything, being confined to our homes, having to survive off of a digital campaign helps a candidacy like mine and bridges the divide that might normally exist between these very powerful and entrenched incumbents and insurgent progressive challengers like myself.
Just be nice to my generation. You don't ever hear a candidate give a website of an opponent. That's interesting on its own. I actually agree with your thesis about what Corona has done. Hector Oseguera, candidate for Congress in the 8th District of New Jersey. Thanks so much for coming on the conversation.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm at a Wolfpack gathering.
We're growing. I see faces that I recognize, but I also see a lot of faces that I don't recognize, and that's fantastic.
We are all taking time out of our lives to be here, and that's amazing. That means we truly believe in this.
Make no mistake, everyone in this room is a leader in a Wolfpack.
Alaska, West Virginia, Montana, Georgia, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, everyone is here. All these folks paid with their own money and sometimes took vacation days to come here to strategize on how to get our democracy back and get money out of politics.
Or you get more political power just because you have more money. This is why it requires a constitutional amendment.
The process of winning in your state next year doesn't begin when session begins. It begins right now.
To work to a goal, something this big that you're actually making a difference of, there's very few things in the world that really compare to that feeling.
Equal rights to fair representation, rights for human beings, anti-corruption laws, and free and fair elections. That's what we are fighting for.
What were the founding fathers? Revolutionaries. And they built revolution into the document.
So Article 5 is the way we have to go.
This is how you do it.
You're in this as a team, you're in this together. The fight will always continue.
That fight is not between the left and the right. That fight is between basically greed and humanity.
So I'm asking you to put differences aside, whether you're conservative or independent or progressive, to join forces to say no more corruption.
You get beyond the fear, you take that first step, and you'll change the world.
What I want to leave you with, of course, is hope. And I want to assure you that if we keep fighting together, we're going to win together. We're going to get that convention, we're going to get that amendment, and we're going to get our democracy back. Come join us, wolf-pack.com.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
The earth is burning.
Yeah.
Not only that, but that should shake you enough, period, but that so many people in power don't seem to care.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries, because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
We have to also remember that we like to put people in prison in this country.
There is only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
Public opinion, your opinion, has zero effect on public policy. The richest people in the country, their opinion has a direct effect.
Leslie Byrne, a Democrat from Virginia, describes that when she went to Congress, she was told by a colleague, quote, always lean to the green. And to clarify, she went on, he was not an environmentalist.
Our government actively serves the richest and the most powerful and turns its back on everyone else.
Finally, end the corruption and get money out of politics and give us back our democracy.
My name is Carlos Hernandez. I am the valet parking for this small parking lot. I work for TYTs, and they come into this lot over 4 years. I know two more famous person, Bernie Sanders, the former Vice President Al Gore, and too many other guys. I'm so happy to cover it with TYT.
You know, in the world of doing interviews, every once in a while you find out who you're going to be interviewing, and you say, "Oh my God, how did we get this guy?" And today is such a case. Welcome to the conversation. I'm Michael Shore, and my guest today, John Mitarola. John,
how's it going?
I'm excited to have you here. It's going well. I am always excited to see you, but this is a project that we're talking about that was very dear to you and was because I remember when you came back, a life-changing experience and a once-in-a-lifetime, presumably, experience for you. In 2018, you went north. You went to the Arctic, and you got up close and personal with the effects of climate change, but also why we are so concerned about climate change. 2 years on, when you look back at that trip, and we're going to talk about True North, the series that you contributed for there and you hosted, tell me a little bit about how it is looking back 2 years later now, not immediately after.
It was definitely unique, and overall my impression is looking back on it after several years. I believe it was actually fall of 2017. So I've had even more time to sort of think about it. It doesn't feel like it happened. Almost like at the time, it was such a big thing. It was your whole life for literally months. And looking back, it seems like I saw a movie where it happened to someone. And watching the first episode again, because it's now rerunning and one is already out, I was sort of reminded, oh, wait, yeah, I was there. I was in that ghost town. I walked past that building. I saw that fox. Yeah, and I can't wait to see the episodes, of me on the sealing vessel with the climate change researchers. It's going to be like sort of discovering it again for the first time, because it's been literally years since I or basically anyone has been able to see it.
Whether you're going to Yonkers, New York, or you're going to the north, you have a preconceived notion of what it's going to be like. What was shattered for you? What did you think? And what was surprised? I don't mean shattered in a bad way. Like what was a surprise for you and changed your thinking going in?
I mean, one thing is I think rightly that it was going to be difficult, like physically, and in terms of safety. We went to Germany to do training for the part that would be on the ocean and dealing with different animals and things like that. And so I knew that all of that would be difficult, but I didn't get that filming a docuseries like this would be as much work as it was. The sheer number of hours, and obviously I being the host, that means that I had literally the easiest job out of everyone on the team. The actual, like the director and cinematographer, they were doing far more than me. But even the tiny version of it that I had, it was a lot of work, and under difficult circumstances where you are away from your life for a long time. That was a novel experience back then. Now everyone is experiencing their entire life shutting down. But even being away from civilization for literally weeks when I was off on the ship and had almost no contact with the outside world, it was a lot. And not just in terms of, trying to, stay alive, be comfortable, all of that, but it was a lot of work too. And that made it even more, I guess, valuable experience to have done.
So when you go on trips like that and you have experience, there's some experiences that come into every life that are really difficult to articulate when you come back, right? It's difficult to describe something you saw. What is that one driving thing that you wanted to share about this that was maybe more difficult to talk about then, but now it feels so important and something that you really want to talk about it?
So I know what it is, but I'll say first, I will never be able to articulate how bad the seasickness was for one period on that ship. You tell people, how far up and down the ship was moving or the way, and they don't get it. They've been on a ship, so they think they get seasickness, but they don't know what this ship was like. Right. But that wasn't it. No, the actual experience was the most scared that I've ever been in my life was the night that I did guard duty against polar bears. And now I look back and I think, you were fine. Nothing was probably going to happen. But at the time, when you're the only person awake, the only thing you have to defend yourself is a flashlight. And you've been spending the past couple of months watching videos of polar bears literally hunting, like cleverly hunting prey, hiding and then striking. It was terrifying in a way that I think we did the best job possible in the episode about that trip where we went onto a glacier. I think we did as good of a job as we can of articulating that, but I don't know that it actually can get across the experience that I can only sort of dimly remember having. But I know at the time that was the most scared I've ever been in my life.
Wow. I mean, and you talk about fear being one of the emotions you felt pretty profoundly during this trip. Were you prepared for them? And was that a surprise? Oh, John, by the way, you're going to be on watch tonight.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that I would be doing. I mean, I knew like a day or two before, but when I did the trip, I didn't know that. I also didn't know that when we went to camp that night, we would get off of the little like boat. So we had the big boat, we had a little boat that took us to the shore, and we pulled a little like rowboat effectively onto the shore, and then we're like, okay, we're gonna camp over there. And between the boat and there is maybe 10 yards and one massive track of polar bear tracks going across. So the camp was right, it was a couple feet away from polar bear tracks, and the polar bear tracks were just a couple of feet away from the water. And so in high tide, they would be destroyed, which means they were pretty fresh. Right. So that surprised me.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you want people to take away from this. Like, what is the lesson or the experience that you most want to share for people to take away from and be inspired by?
So the entire show is not just about climate change. We talk about a lot of different things. Many of them are related to climate change. But what I would want them to take away is being able to see the experience of being embedded with these climate researchers on the vessel that I was on for several weeks, seeing what their life and their research is actually like, seeing them talk about their work, and just the sheer, sometimes frustrating humility and caution they use when speaking about these things. I think that it just destroys the idea that these climate scientists are they're just like, they're being paid to lie about this hoax of climate change. They're fear-mongering, they're hysterical. No, they're the exact opposite of that. And so I hope that people take that away. And also, I want them to just see the beauty of this part of the world that almost no one will see, and to see us talk to locals there, talk about how much it's changed just in the past few years, how rapidly the change is happening, that we got to see a place that if we go back in 20 years, it won't look the same at that point, and it might never look that way again. And so I want them to get a picture of the people who are working to stop climate change and for us to understand it, but also to see what is already happening in the world. It might not be in our backyard, although in many ways it is, but other areas are being devastated too.
Right. Is there a fact that blew you away, that still blows you away, that you learned when you were there?
Interesting. I mean, probably several. I mean, one, the fact that we stayed for a time in a little settlement called Longyearbyen, which is basically the northernmost place that people live, and they have they have students and researchers that'll go there, and they have had a difficulty in housing these people because many of the newer apartments they've built, thanks to climate change eroding the ground, they've collapsed or been destroyed by land, like earth slides, mudslides, and things like that. And so in this area where they're going, many of them, to try to learn more about climate change, they're finding it difficult to do that because climate change is making it inhospitable for them to just do their work there. It's literally destroying the buildings out from under them.
It's an amazing thing. I mean, from what you experience, and you're a layperson when it comes to this, but the notion, right, that you can even do a nature show without it being about climate change anymore. I mean, that's over with now, right? I mean, it's impossible to do that without talking about this issue.
Yeah, well, it would be highly irresponsible at the very least. But it was a show about the climate, but it was also a show about it was about ecology, it was about animal species, how they've been affected. We talked about some things like whaling and things like that, how it's affected all these different species. But we also talked about resource extraction, which is obviously related to climate change, but also causes its own problems. We talked about some of the political conflict that's led to, both in the present and in the past as well. All of these things are related, and I hope that in the same way that I think many people communicating about these issues in politics and media, and hopefully in films and entertainment and documentaries as well, that when we talk about these things, we have to do a better job of relating them, of talking about them not as singular issues that we need to worry about, but as part of a web of issues that need to be understood together and also need to be responded to, dealt with together.
Yeah, and that's what you're with True North, that's what you're trying to do, to relate these stories and your experiences that were so unique. And like you said, you may be going back, but to most people, this is something that they're going to have to look at through your eyes. Tell me, how do people watch this, John?
What you can do is new episodes are being released Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific time. This was starting on April 20th, so one episode is out. And while new episodes come out on Mondays, they're going to replay throughout the week. They're available on Pluto TV, Roku, Comcast Xfinity X1 and Flex, Xumo, and YouTube TV. You're seeing it there. So you can watch the new episodes each Monday, and then you can watch the replays throughout the week after that. And so if you want to catch the first one, you have tomorrow and the next day to do that. And with these things, you never know where they're going to end up. So feel free to record the episodes for later viewing as well.
All right. It sounds good, John. I mean, it's an exciting thing to be able to share your experience with so many people, and I look forward to watching it. And John Iadarola, thank you for making time for the Young Turks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's a very big day today. I want to start by saying that we're making tremendous strides. Since we announced our guidelines on opening up America, as we call it, with a gun, they're making plans and preparations.
I only brought my gun and my wife and my Constitution.
Opening up America, and we add the word gun. I think we can add the word again.
All right. Well, the Young Turks, J.Q. Granick is paired with you guys. So we got an exciting show as always.
You know what? I'm going to interrupt you this time. And I'm going to show this off. Look at this sweater. Look at it. It's a zipper. Okay. Front zippers are very important. Let's just keep it real. Okay. You don't want to mess this up while you're putting your sweater on. Beautiful contrast with the dark color and then the light color, strings, I guess you can call them, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, no, you guys don't get it. See that pocket? There's another pocket in there.
Oh, no, there isn't.
TYT hoodies.
No way.
TYT hoodies are the best. No,
I can't believe there's another pocket in there.
Let me just say,
saw that coming.
I didn't know what this was going to be. I wasn't expecting this package. And then all of a sudden I noticed that there is a package in the mail. And I'm like, oh, what is that? And when I saw it was a hoodie, I literally screamed for happiness and joy. Yeah. I love these hoodies. So Shop TYT, thank you for sending this over to me. I absolutely love it. I wear my green TYT hoodie all the time. I love that I have a black color now that'll go with anything. So it's excellent.
By the way, I noticed that the thugs over at shoptyt.com did not send me any of those new hoodies. It's probably the only TYT merch I don't own. That looks good. I like the logo on there. Anyways, I have a shirt too that I haven't worn in a long time, and it's relatively new. It's this one. Take out the trash in 2020. And it doesn't say trash, and it doesn't say MAGA. We're just saying. ShopTYT.com.
We can put two and two together. Yes, love it.
So if you want to be a little bit more aggressive in your neighborhood. So if you live in a blue state, they'll love it. It's a little careful in the red states. Anyway, so we're going to talk about some of the red states and the devastation there. Look, we got a tough job doing a show that is relatively optimistic and at times fun through disaster after disaster after disaster. You got Trump, you got progressives losing, you got coronavirus. I mean, wow, we got hit from all sides. So anyway, but the one side we have completely fortified is you guys. So you've been helping us through this coronavirus, which we absolutely positively need, and we got to keep it going. Right now, we're at 208,460 for the month, as Brett will show you here at tyt.com/go. Thank you to Joe from LA for giving the 50,000 matching grant that put us over the top. But let's see if we can get it without the matching grant so that we can carry it over to May like we did in April, because we got to get 200,000 every month. Otherwise, we're in trouble here during these dark days. So tyt.com/go. We love you guys for it. Let's see if we can get 210 by the end of the show. All right, Anna, let's get started.
All right. An additional 4.4 million Americans have filed for unemployment, bringing the total number to 26.5. And I really do want to emphasize that there is a backlog of unemployment claims, meaning that the actual number is likely to be much higher. Now, that is a lot of people, and keep in mind that many states, specifically red states, and states like Florida, which is still considered purple, don't really have a robust unemployment system. And so in Florida specifically, only 6% of people who filed for unemployment actually had their unemployment requests fulfilled. And so many people are suffering right now. For instance, more than 2/3 of US Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and experts predict that people in service jobs, manufacturing, and construction will likely be hit hardest by the upcoming economic turmoil, which represents more than 1/3 of the US's labor force, about 53 million people. Now, one other piece of data that I think is incredibly relevant is the difference we're seeing in the number of unemployment claims in blue states versus red states. Politico found some interesting data, finding that job losses are actually piling up in states like Michigan, a lot of battleground states that provided Donald Trump his victory. So in Michigan, for instance, more than 1 in 4 workers applied for unemployment benefits in the past 5 weeks. Then you go to Pennsylvania, another key Rust Belt state that voted for Trump in 2016. Nearly 1/4 of the workforce has filed for an unemployment claim since mid-March. And then Ohio is seeing more than 17% of workers filing jobless claims, outpacing the national average of 16.1%, as is Minnesota, a state Trump narrowly lost. Now, if you are a Republican or a conservative hoping that there will be financial relief because of Republican leadership, you would be wrong, because now that the conversation has shifted away from corporate bailouts and toward relief for average Americans and for states, you get this kind of talk from people like Mitch McConnell.
The next debate, which I assume will relate to state and local government relief, needs to be when the Senate is back in session with full participation. And in the meantime, also take a look at how much debt we've racked up and not try to wave something through the Senate of that consequence without full participation.
Oh, now we're talking about the debt. When we were passing trillions of dollars in legislation to help big business, which coincidentally happens to be the donors of Mitch McConnell and the Republicans, there was no talk of debt. When we were letting the Fed print an extra $4 trillion to give to exclusively to big businesses, there was no talk of debt. There was no talk of any of that. But now that they're on to the 4th stage where they would help the average American, they're like, there's debt. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? When it's their donors, never, ever, ever ask how you're going to pay for it. When it's you guys, I don't know, man. I mean, how the hell would we help a citizen? Citizens don't pay our campaign contributions. The Koch brothers do, ExxonMobil does, etc. So now let me give you a sense of the politics of it as well as the human toll. So first of all, most Americans are onto these guys. By the way, that's part of the reason why Tucker Carlson does shows where he hits big business all the time, because he's sensing that rage on the right-wing side too. 77% of Americans say that Congress largely helped big business. Hey, and they say everybody's low information voters. No, they figured it out. Yeah, their gut tells them what is obvious, and the numbers say it too. Yes, you're absolutely right. They did. They largely helped big business. And Americans know it, including Republicans. So then when you look at the devastation that's coming to the average American, and I'm going to explain in a second why it's so much worse for the workers than it is for the businesses. So you've got 43% of Americans that now have either lost a job or had their wages cut. 43% of American workers. That's a giant number. It's 52% of low-income workers, so they've been hit even harder. 53% of low-income workers are saying they don't know how they're going to pay the bills. They already have bills they can't pay. 53%. Among middle-class Americans, 25% say they don't know how they're going to pay the bills. And even among the highest income earners in America, 11% saying they're having trouble paying the bills. So this is a rolling tide of economic disaster, and it's mainly hitting, of course, citizens, actual human beings, but they are prioritized last. The $1,200 that they put in there in the beginning was a tiny fraction of the overall money spent by Congress. And to give you a sense of context there, the average rent in the country is $1,231. So it doesn't even cover 1 month of rent, let alone food and all of your other expenses. And then what do you do in the second month when now all of a sudden Mitch McConnell and the Republicans go, we don't have any money left. So good luck to you.
So, Cenk, yesterday on the show with John, we were discussing a story that broke regarding how Mitch McConnell thinks that rather than funding the states and helping them to stay afloat in the middle of this crisis, it makes more sense to just allow them to go bankrupt. And so, look, sometimes when we do stories, I'm like so mentally overwhelmed with getting the show produced and ready that I haven't really properly sat down to allow the story to enrage me as much as it should. But we all pay our federal taxes. We pay our federal. So, okay. So if Mitch McConnell thinks that states should just go bankrupt and we shouldn't ask for help, then why are we paying federal taxes? I mean, if all that money goes to wars, all that money goes to nonsense, they keep cutting the social safety net over and over again. Like, if we can't rely on the federal government for anything, why do we respect it? Why do we pay our federal taxes? No, it's enraging, especially when you consider that those corporations getting those bailouts got that giant Trump tax cut, $2 trillion over 10 years. And then on top of that, they got bailed out and haven't been paying their taxes. Sometimes they get a tax rebate when they file their taxes. Why do they get a bailout and the American people get nothing and the states get nothing? It's disgusting.
Well, the establishment often says that progressives are too loud, too aggressive, and we don't respect we don't respect civility enough. In fact, the LA Times, in choosing to endorse my opponent in my brief congressional run, said basically Cenk is right about the issues, but he's too aggressive in fighting back, and we prefer civility. Well, this is what civility's gotten us: nonstop surrender to Republicans and their corporate donors, but honestly, the donors of a lot of the Democrats too. And so that's why they work together. And when we point that out, we're the bad guys. Why do we point it out? We point it out to protect you guys, because apparently no one else will. So you got prioritized last again. Now, let me give you a sense of why there's in such a panic to give the overwhelming majority of the money to big business. So when you think about business, what are the costs of a business, right? You've got mainly employee costs. So now a lot of the businesses have already laid people off or cut their wages, so they've mitigated that cost. So especially the ones like restaurants that aren't open, so that obviously they had to furlough or let go, et cetera. There were the waiters, bartenders. We understand that. So who gets hurt the most there? The workers do, because businesses already gotten rid of that cost. So then what cost remains? Fixed costs remain. Well, okay, well then what's the fixed cost? Your main fixed cost usually is rent and interest payments. Okay, well, rent, sometimes now you can't pay the rent. Well, that goes to real estate. Well, real estate, when they don't get the rent, they can't pay the money that they owe to the banks. And wait, the other big cost was interest for a lot of big businesses. That also goes to the banks. Oh, so all of that money at the end of the day is used to pay the banks. And the banks run this place. So that's why they immediately got $6 trillion to make sure that the big banks were okay. Now, did the executives of those banks and the shareholders of those banks share their hundreds of billions of dollars in profits with you guys over the last 10, 20 years? Nope, they didn't share any of the profits. But now, when you desperately need help, they say, hey, all of a sudden we don't have any money. Why? Where did it go? It went to big business, which then gave it to the big banks.
It's truly, truly disgusting. But there are some developments with funding for small businesses. So I want to share that story with all of you. So the House of Representatives voted today on the bill to provide additional funding to small businesses. As we've reported earlier, the funds for small businesses ran out quickly. And part of the problem was that a number of big companies that are publicly traded applied for these loans and were approved. And the funny part about all of this is how the Treasury Department is now pretending as if they didn't know that there was lack of oversight and that this money wasn't going to go to people or companies, I should say, that shouldn't have applied for it in the first place. I'll give you what the response is, what the update is from the Treasury Department. But before I do so, I think that the only commentary that was worth listening to on the House floor was that of the progressive members of Congress. Here is the notorious squad speaking out about the flaws in this legislation.
But it's also indefensible for us not to focus on replenishing the coffers of Americans and focus on making sure they are able to support paying their rent, making sure that our cities and states are not going bankrupt, and making sure American families are not dying of hunger.
This bill is only necessary because in the last bill, Republicans prioritized a $500 billion gift to corporations that turned around and laid off workers who bailed them out. Our people need us to prioritize public health and testing, and they need reoccurring monthly relief payments now.
It is a joke when Republicans say that they have urgency around this bill. The only folks that they have urgency around are folks like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and Shake Shack. Those are the people getting assistance in this bill. You are not trying to fix this bill for mom and pops, and we have to fight to fund hospitals, fighting to fund testing. That is what we're fighting for in this bill. It is unconscionable. If you had urgency, you would legislate like rent was due on May 1st and make sure that we include rent and mortgage relief for our constituents. Thank you very much.
So I just want to note that the demands from the progressive members of the House were not met. So they did not receive the additional funding they wanted for the states, for instance. There is no additional funding to provide recurring $2,000 payments to Americans who are unable to work right now. But there is additional funding for the small businesses. This version of the stimulus is nearly $500 million. So it's something, right? I'm sorry, $1 billion. So it's something, but it's still not enough to help average Americans pay their bills, pay their rent. Rent is obviously coming up soon. I also wanted to just note that in that video featuring Rashida Tlaib, there was a little girl, a picture of a little girl behind her. And that little girl died from COVID-19 in Michigan. She was only 5 years old. Her mother is a police officer. Her father is a firefighter. So we're talking about essential workers who are out there not only risking their own lives, but by being exposed to this virus, they're also risking the lives of their family members. And this is the reality that average Americans are facing right now. And it's devastating that they can't rely on Congress to do something to help them.
Today, we're passing 50,000 deaths in America from coronavirus. These are all at a minimum. We have 5% of the world's population and now over a quarter of the world's deaths in coronavirus. We have handled this with great ineptitude and incompetence, and we have prioritized both the health and the wealth of the average American at the very, very bottom. So, guys, we're not selectively picking fiery speeches from Congress. You're only seeing Justice Democrats because they're the only ones fighting. So, yes, other Democrats give timid speeches, but do they fight back and try to prioritize the average person more? No. In fact, the Just Democrats that you just saw doing that are oftentimes shunned. Hey, we have a deal with Mitch McConnell. It's a great deal. We have a great deal with Kevin McCarthy and Donald Trump. You guys don't throw a monkey wrench into this. Most of our donors are we're being wonderfully bipartisan. Yeah. Okay, so I take those Just Democrats over the rest of Congress combined, and that's actually super easy. And by the way, put more Just Democrats in. The elections are still going. JustDemocrats.com/. Just go to JustDemocrats.com. You'll see all of the candidates that are left and how you can contribute. All right, now onto the bill itself. Look, there's nothing wrong with the helping the small businesses. That portion of it is great. It's coming in the third version of relief. Yes, there was also a portion for small businesses in an earlier version, but the priority order should be citizens first, meaning the workers and the average American, then small business, then big business. And of course, since it's corrupt Congress, it has gone exactly the opposite. The great lion's share has gone to big business. Now they're finally getting back to small business because the small amount that they gave for small business ran out immediately. That's why they had to replenish here. I'm glad they are. And now the fourth version of relief would be for actual Americans. And that's where the Republicans now are drawing the line and saying, well, I mean, we got debt. How are you going to pay for that? Workers. When's the last time they gave me a campaign contribution? By the way, the reason.
And by the way, AOC. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, no, and if folks say, hey, well, look, AOC and the rest of the Just Democrats fight for the average person because that's who they get their donations from. They get it $5, $20 at a time from average people because they don't take corporate PAC money. To which I say, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in regard to Republicans all of a sudden pretending like they care about debt or the national debt, AOC did respond to that worry or that concern by saying something very simple. And I'm glad to hear someone in Congress say this clearly. Let's roll back that $2 trillion tax cut. If you're worried about the deficit and if you're worried about our national debt, let's raise some taxes. Love it. And she's absolutely right. Now, onto the Treasury Department. That money did run out quickly. And it's been a big concern that some of that small business money went to companies that shouldn't have even applied to it. And now all of a sudden, the Treasury Department, the same Treasury Department that refused to provide real oversight or guidelines initially when it came to this money, is pretending like they didn't know and that they're going to scold companies that apply but shouldn't be applying. So according to the Washington Post, the Treasury Department on Thursday issued guidance making it much harder for publicly traded companies to qualify for money that was supposed to go to small businesses, threatening penalties in some cases if firms don't repay money they had already received. And the Federal Reserve announced that it would be disclosing the names of companies that receive funding from its assistance programs after complaints that the central bank wasn't being transparent about where the taxpayer aid was going. So sometimes when you shame people and you fight hard enough, you'll get these types of concessions. And I think that transparency is incredibly important. I don't believe Steve Mnuchin. I don't believe the Treasury Department at all when they're pretending to be shocked and chagrined, as you'd say, Cenk, about what's been happening with these small business funding. This is the way that the country has been operating for a long time now. It's just that enough Americans are finally speaking out and they're demanding better.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm glad they finally are getting to small businesses again since the money ran out so quickly. But for God's sake, don't forget the people you're supposed to be serving and representing the most, which is the actual human beings of this country.
When we come back from the break, Donald Trump throws a Republican under the bus after encouraging this Republican to do something. It's incredible. And then later in the show, actually, it's a post-game story. So if you're not a member, you should become one. We are going to dunk on Cenk and his notorious interview with someone who just got a huge promotion within the Pentagon. We'll be right back.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding. Because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a... Call us now at Simon Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
When you choose Aspiration, you can also trust that your hard-earned money is deposited into a financial firm with a conscience. You're sending a message for change and saving yourself more than just a couple bucks along the way. With the Aspiration Spend and Save account, you'll actually pay no monthly fees. Aspiration also commits to donating 10% of every dollar of its earnings to charitable microloans for low-income Americans. And as a thank you, when you sign up with Aspiration, we'll give you a free month of TYT membership. Head to aspiration.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, we were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views. Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
When you sign up for NordVPN, you'll take control of your internet experience while helping support us here at TYT. NordVPN allows up to 6 connections at once and no data limits, so you can get all the content you want on any device. For a limited time, go to nordvpn.com/TYT or use the coupon TYT to get a 3-year plan for 70% off plus 1 extra month free.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Let's go to your comments from the member section. I love this one. The Good Doctor writes in, I've been a member for a few months, but I never realized the enjoyment of just being with members and fewer insane comments. Thank you. Well, thank you right back.
That is a perk.
It is. It is. So, guys, look, we tell you there's a couple different ways to become a member on YouTube. You can click the join button underneath the video. But tyt.com/join gets you membership through our website. That's where you have the members interact with each other. It's a community. And those are the comments we read first live on air. Okay, there's all wonderful parts of being a YouTube member, too. But I'm just telling you on the website, that's a huge advantage. tyt.com/join. All right, Kiddo says, nothing makes a woman happier than pockets, except for another pocket in those pockets.
Definitely. 100%. You can never have enough pockets.
So she was
unless you're wearing like cargo pants. Like cargo pants can become a bit much, but like on a hoodie, pocket within a pocket is good.
Yeah, so Anna was wearing the TYT hoodie earlier, but it's hot in LA now. So anyway, check that out at shoptyt.com. All right, Alex D in YouTube Super Chat writes in, if the corporations have all the money, then why would they need the banks? Well, Alex, number one, they don't have the money anymore. They did stock buybacks to artificially inflate their stock price. And you think, oops, so that's largely wasted. No, they already took it home in executive pay. So because of the higher amounts at the end of the year, the higher stock prices, the executives got much bigger bonuses. So when the price crashed later, yeah, for the company, it was a total waste of money. And now they don't have money when they need it. But for the executives, they got rich. And that money's already in their house. And you're never going to get it back. So that's how this game is played. Now they still have debt. Almost all corporations have debt to banks. And that's why they need the banks. Okay, anyway, last one's kind of a long, fascinating one, but Franklin Sharpslicer writes in on YouTube Super Chat. Adventures. Back in 1981, I and a crew of 12 built a Tom Sawyer raft and floated down the Missouri River. 1,420 river miles. Wow. 2 months. Wow. It was fun. Like the virus, it changed our lives. I hope in a good way, though. Anyway, now TYT does. Salute to Casper. From Casper, Missouri, and adds Jank too. Okay.
Sorry, Jank. Sorry.
It's all good. Hey, look, they live in Casper, Missouri. They don't live in Jank, Missouri. Though one day. All right. Thanks for using YouTube Super Chat, and of course, you could always donate to our audience funding drive also from tyt.com/go. Speaking of which, we're going to have a giant show for you guys in a couple of weeks where I'm going to unveil my 5-year plan, and we have a lot more surprises, so don't miss that big show. We'll tell you more about it as time goes on. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. Donald Trump threw Georgia Governor Brian Kemp under a bus after he was honestly seen encouraging governors to reopen businesses in their own states. In fact, we just learned that a source close to Trump spoke to CNN and said the night before Trump threw Brian Kemp under the bus, he and Pence actually gave him a call and gave him kudos for opening businesses up starting Friday, meaning tomorrow. Certain businesses can start opening in the state of Georgia. So CNN reports that Trump and Pence complimented Kemp on his performance as Georgia governor, the source said. Another person familiar with the call said it went well. And then the next day, this is what Trump said publicly. Take a look.
The governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, that I disagree strongly with his decision to open certain facilities which are in violation of the Phase 1 guidelines for the incredible people of Georgia. They're incredible people. I love those people. They're great. They've been strong, resolute, but at the same time, he must do what he thinks is right. I want him to do what he thinks is right. But I disagree with him on what he's doing.
Amazing.
Okay.
Amazing.
When he throws the word strongly in there, that's meant to say like, hey, now watch yourself, right? And Kemp's got to be thinking, what just happened to me? You call me yesterday and tell me I'm doing a great job and you're glad I'm reopening. You come out the next day and throw me under the bus in front of the whole country and say you strongly disagree with me. Yeah, welcome to Trump land. What do you think was going to happen?
Well, what's going on? I thought I was asymptomatic. Turns out I got symptoms of being cucked. That's exactly what happened to him. 100%. Wow.
He's got the cuck virus. Well, that's because Trump, A, changes his mind all the time. B, doesn't care about any allies. He'll undercut anyone. And C, has no mind to begin with. So probably right before the press conference, someone told him, hey, you know what? If it turns out there's a flare-up of cases in Georgia and you back Kemp, you'll be blamed for all the deaths. And then you might lose Georgia, which in some scenarios could be a swing state. And then so he comes out and goes, oh, who cares about Kemp and allies and Republicans? I don't care. All I care about is me. So, okay, now that you told me that, which I didn't know before because I'm an idiot, okay, yeah, you know what? I strongly disagree. In case something goes wrong, I want him blamed, not me. And that's how this thing works, man. So, and no Republican believes that it's going to happen to them until Trump does it to them.
It is incredible how many case studies do we have now of Donald Trump showing how little loyalty he has, no loyalty to anyone, really, even members of his own family, right? With the exception of Ivanka. He loves Ivanka. But how do you put everything on the line to be like a Trump sycophant, which, by the way, Brian Kemp absolutely has been, thinking that Trump will never turn on you? Of course he's going to turn on you. Trump only thinks about himself. That's it. And this story actually gets even more petty because keep in mind that Brian Kemp is the person who appointed Senator Kelly Loeffler to her position. So she is a U.S. senator. She never had to go through an election. She was appointed by Brian Kemp. A person who wanted to run for that seat was Doug Collins. In fact, now he's running against Loeffler, basically primarying her as a Republican. And so what's incredible is like he's still bitter about what Brian Kemp did in appointing Loeffler instead of him. And so he decided to do an interview to like wag his finger at Kemp as well. Let's take a quick look at that.
So, look, the president wants the country open. I want the country open. The governor wants the country open. The problem is, how do you do it? And I think that's the problem with leadership. Yeah. Leadership's about communicating, and when you're not communicating clearly, look, the governor did not take away the stay-at-home order, but yet selectively decided certain businesses can open up. I'll tell you this, my concern is not having the local input into that, because up in my area, which is just north of Atlanta, we're having an increase in cases. In my local hospital, they're seeing a rapid increase. So it is, depending on the spot, that's where I think locals needed to have more input, and it's made people nervous. I think clear communication is what has to happen, but when you're telling people to still stay at home, but yet we're going to open certain businesses, that creates a problem in which people are not sure what to do.
And just to give you some updated numbers, Cenk, real quick, Georgia has tested less than 1% of its population for COVID-19, but there are already nearly 21,000 cases confirmed, and there have been 838 deaths. So Georgia is struggling right now with coronavirus, and Kemp has decided that some businesses can begin opening tomorrow, Friday, and other businesses can start opening on Monday of next week.
So let me decipher for you what Doug Collins just said. He said, well, in essence, of course, the governor and I don't disagree. We're both Republicans, and big business, reopen as soon as possible. So, but I hate him because he picked Loeffler instead of me. And I mean, I probably hate him more than I hate any Democrat because of that action, because he's personally thwarted my political career. So I'm going to go on TV and blame him. But what am I going to blame him for, since we really agree? Well, I'm going to be, you should have consulted with more locals. Oh, that's a good one. Conservatives like more local control, so I'll throw that local word in there and find a way to present. And the other one is just leadership, general leadership, bad communication. So, okay, what do you disagree with? Well, communication. They don't disagree. It's petty politics. And the reality is Trump was also pushing for reopening. If Trump actually was against Kemp and Doug Collins was actually against Kemp philosophically and said, no, wait a minute, they're not being nearly careful, Kemp is not being nearly careful enough, then I'd say, great, that's wonderful. I'm happy to have him on the side of rationality. But it's all political maneuvering and has almost nothing to do with reality.
You're 100% right. Well, let's move on to a Democrat who had a response to an important question that I don't think was okay. So let's talk about that. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo was asked about people who are desperate to get back to work because they have not received enough government assistance or relief in order to be able to pay their bills and feed their families. And so a reporter asked him, what should they do? And just get a load of the way he reacted.
You can hear, but there are protesters outside right now honking their horns and raising signs. Their point is the cure can't be worse than the illness itself. Yeah. What is your response to them?
The illness is death. What is worse than death? I understand the economic hardship. We all feel it. The question is, what do you do about it? And do you put public health at risk? And do you drive up the number of deaths for it? Because you have no idea how to reopen now.
So they're saying that, is there a fundamental right to work if the government can't get me the money when I need it? Is there a fundamental right
you want to go to work? Go take a job as an essential worker. Do it tomorrow. Right? You're working.
I am.
You're an essential worker. So go take a job as an essential worker.
But the people aren't hiring because of the
No, there are
pandemic.
people hiring. You can get a job as an essential worker. So now you can go to work and you can be an essential worker and you're not going to kill anyone.
Okay, so before I get into the reasons why I didn't like that answer, I want you to jump in, Cenk.
Yeah, so of course that's not a good answer. That's flippant. There's now what, over 24 million, is it up to 26.5 million? I'm starting to lose track of unemployed in the last 5 weeks. I think it's 26.5. And so there are not 26.5 million essential worker jobs available. That's ridiculous. And so, look, Cuomo, there's a political part of this, and then there's the really, really important policy part of it. In terms of the politics of it, Cuomo has had skyrocketing poll numbers for a couple of reasons. Number one, usually leaders go up in time of crisis. Number two, he's being compared to the one other guy on TV, that's Donald Trump. And by comparison, he looks like a god, right? Because Trump's a clown and doesn't know anything. It says half the things he says are factually incorrect. He does show and tell with swabs and Q-tips. I mean, compared to that, Cuomo looks like an unbelievable leader and a total adult. And then the third reason, honestly, is most people don't see the whole press conference. Almost nobody sees it, right? So they see clips. But the clips that people are seeing most now, and I'm seeing it in my personal life too, is the ones where Andrew Cuomo and Chris Cuomo are talking on TV and they're ribbing each other, okay? And people love that. They're going supernova viral online. So the main thing that people are seeing is, oh my God, Andrew loves his brother Chris, but they have such a good relationship. Boom, skyrocketing poll numbers. So when he says stuff like this, people are barely going to see it and they're barely going to care. He's still going to have huge numbers. Now, in terms of the policy, I think that answer there was really problematic, not just because there aren't that many jobs as essential workers, but because he needs to, and Democrats need to, better comprehend and address the tsunami of pain that's coming for the average American. Because once you run out of about a month's pay, and once you run out of that $1,200 check, which is going to happen so quick, then you're screwed. 43% of Americans have either lost their job or had their salaries cut. Man, we are going to have unbelievable pain in this country any day now. So leaders like Cuomo better get themselves right and understand and empathize with that pain that's coming.
So my issue with that answer was that it was actually an opportunity for him to brag about his leadership. And it was weird that he gave that flippant answer, because the first thing that I wanted to do was figure out, well, how is New York handling unemployment claims? Because look, yes, Manhattan is very expensive to live in, but, you know, keep in mind that the federal government, the one good thing that came out of that stimulus law was the money that will be added on top of state unemployment benefits, which is $600 a week on top of what the state is giving you per week, right? But the problem is that states have been overwhelmed with the number of people applying for unemployment. So I was curious to see if Andrew Cuomo has done anything as the leader of the state to help process unemployment claims. And he's actually done a lot. I think that there's still room for improvement. There's no question. But he's been way more aggressive than, you know, politicians in Florida, for instance, where only 6% of unemployment claims have been fulfilled. So just to give you some specific examples, between the weeks ending March 14th and April 11th, 1.2 million New Yorkers have filed unemployment claims, a number far greater than the 300,000 who submitted unemployment claims during the 2008 economic crisis, right? But in response to that, They hired an additional 2,700 workers to process unemployment applications. They expanded the hours that jobless individuals can file claims, and they sent $2.2 billion to 1.1 million unemployed New Yorkers. So like they're working on it, and that would have been a great opportunity for him to say, look, here's what we're doing. We know that people are struggling right now and getting through the system. We're addressing it because we know that people are hurting. Instead of using the opportunity for messaging that shows that he's doing something and he's actually connecting with people who are stressed out about their finances, he was just so dismissive. And I don't know why he did that. I thought that was really dumb on his part.
So Cuomo's done a lot of things wrong here, and New York Times actually did good reporting on that. He's also done a lot of things right. So it's a mixed record. But for him, but much more importantly, at the federal level, for guys like Mitch McConnell, who at the end of the day control massive trillions of dollars in federal spending more than anybody else does, I think they're going to get hit with something they're not at all ready for. So when I briefly ran for Congress, I talked to about 1,000 people, all economic ranges, including the poor and the middle class, which these guys haven't talked to in decades, if ever. Okay. And I'm telling you right now, once that money runs out and you're out of a job, and then there's going to be massive desperation. People are not going to know how to even get food, let alone pay the rent. And when that desperation hits and we're all supposed to stay at home, but you got no way of providing for your family, I mean, it could be mayhem. So I think they have no idea what's about to come.
We got to take a break, but when we come back, turns out Las Vegas has the kind of mayor you'd expect Las Vegas to have. We'll be right back.
Well, the Young Turks, the Friday show, it's going to be awesome. We're going to help us over here. Drop it. We became the first ever daily online web television show.
No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we have due process, that is America.
On top of that, they go, why don't they just stay at their own schools? You gotta realize something. These schools suck. They want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ain't got no straps, you ain't got no boots.
He lit these fires in trash bins all around town out of frustration.
99th most viewed channel today on YouTube.
The Shorties Award! Best web host.
We passed 1 billion views. Voice Award winner, News and Information Channel, The Young Turks. Oh, another Webby.
The Young Turks! Can I curse?
Yeah! For those of you watching on live stream, yes, we have adopted a pet iguana that showed up at our door.
A haunted version in the dark with our silhouettes.
Now let's get to the best line of the debate. And it was definitely the one against Florence. I told you we were coming.
I mean, you talk about it when it becomes a problem. Our lack of gun control is a problem.
Nonsense BS story is hurting that cause, and they need to wake up and recognize that they are being had by these people.
Biggest gang in America. Question is, how do we make sure that we blame the person who is dead?
We should never forget that the most powerful people in the world exploited the greatest tragedy in American history to go to war in a country that had a lot of oil.
Rolling thunder. That's what this show is.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea. The truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it. And for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Cenk! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
No, I did 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing
0
yourself.
cents, yeah.
It is wrong to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country.
Look, I tell you guys, most important thing is voting in primaries. Primaries, primaries, primaries.
I hope every American will vote for the candidate and party of his choice, but vote.
We cannot continue to complain about corruption and complain about what's happening in this country and continue to vote for it.
Let's get it right this time. It could be a moment of redemption for what happened in 2016.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Time for just a couple of comments here on YouTube Super Chat. We've got the Breaker of Walls. Sounds pretty cool. Writing, sorry, you guys, you got to defend Andrew Cuomo. Strange times. He's gone at the COVID idiots who are protesting. Cuomo did cut Medicaid, though, he adds. That's true, and that's why it's complicated times. And Chris Durant in the member section says, 2 big takeaways. You kind of have to almost admire the brazen shamelessness of Trump, almost. And this wouldn't have happened if Georgia had a competent and savvy governor like Stacey Abrams. That is absolutely right. And that election, of course, was stolen from her. All right, tyt.com/go to keep the Young Turks vibrant, healthy, and make sure we're getting the message out throughout all these times. Okay, Anna, what's next?
Just a quick answer to a question I get a lot on Twitter from the ladies watching the show. Yesterday's lipstick was Mullet Over by Mac. Today is Please Me by Mac. There's just too many of those comments, and I feel bad never answering them. So there you go. All right, let's move on to the rest of the news. So Las Vegas's mayor is urging casinos to open, even though luckily she doesn't have the power to force them to do that. And so here's Mayor Carolyn Goodman talking to Anderson Cooper on CNN in a crazy interview.
You don't believe there should be any social distancing? You don't believe that this is
Of course I believe there should be. Of course.
How do you do that in a casino?
That's up to them to figure out. I don't own a casino. I don't know anything about building
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. You're the mayor of Las Vegas, and you want casinos to be open, even though you have no authority, thankfully, over casinos. But you say open them up, but you have no responsibility about how that would be done safely?
No, you're blurring. No, you're blurring.
You said it's not your job.
There. I am not a private owner of a hotel. I wish I were. And I would have the cleanest hotel with 6 feet figured out for every human being who comes in there.
If you can't figure out how to do this safely, why, as mayor of a city that you were responsible for the people's safety, are you calling for something that you have no plan for how it would be done safely?
I am not a private owner. That's the competition in this country, the free enterprise, and to be able to make sure that what you offer the public meets the needs of the public. Right now, we're in a crisis health-wise, and so for a restaurant to be open or a small boutique to be open, they better figure it out. That's their job. That's not the mayor's job.
Oh, this woman is unhinged. By the way, let's just be completely honest about the economic system we're functioning under. We do not have a free market, okay? These corporations are getting bailed out. That is not a free market. A free market allows them to fail, okay? And then in a free market with free enterprise, where the government sits back and does nothing in providing guidelines for these businesses, how exactly would the free market work if you're dealing with a pandemic where customers, clients, business literally dies? Like, I don't know. I want to ask Dave Rubin, do they then go and write a negative, Yelp review after they've already died as a result of the pandemic? Like, how stupid is this?
It's actually, believe it or not, worse than that. because in the pandemic, so let's say one restaurant opens up and they do a great job of being clean, as she says, and so free market's going to reward them. The other restaurant opens up, they do a bad job at being clean, and their customers get coronavirus. They then go home and give coronavirus to the people who were at the good restaurants that were clean. First of all, there is no such thing as a clean restaurant. They recirculate the air, and the virus is in the air. So, oops, okay? And the air conditioning is a huge part of it, as Anderson Cooper talked about later in the interview. They're in Vegas in the middle of the desert. There's no way to open up those restaurants or casinos or hotels without air conditioning. So you can't have a contagious disease where the free market has good restaurants that keep things open and people safe. That makes no sense in a context like this. But these are not thoughtful people. Her husband is the former mayor of Las Vegas. Politics is all about name recognition and branding. She won because she was his wife and she has the last name Goodman. So we're expecting her to be smart and competent. That's not what politics is about at all. It's about your name and it's about who you serve. And which then leads us to, wait, why is she doing this? And I have the answer, but Anna, I wanted to see if you had more details before I do the big reveal of why.
Okay, I'm excited to hear it. And also keep in mind, it's not just about restaurants. She wants casinos to open. And what do you think you do at casinos? You have your hands all over the place, right? You have it on the slot machines, you have it on the cards, you have it on the chips. So are they going to disinfect everything every time someone touches something? Of course they're not. This is so ridiculous. And I'm glad that she has no power in forcing the casinos to do this. The state's gaming control board will ultimately make the decisions and come out with the guidelines. And they've already said that they plan on following through with the federal guidelines on when to open businesses. And I'm glad that it seems like there are some adults making decisions there. But let's hear a little more from this mayor who, again, luckily has no power over these casinos.
One of those lives is a tragic loss. But when you count 150 versus 2.3 million, you have to say, we have to open up. We have to go back. Our bus drivers, our
But hasn't it been
cleaners,
because of
our
social
restaurants.
distancing that the numbers have been what they are?
How do you know until we have a control group? We offer to be a control group. Anybody who knows anything about statistics knows that, for instance, you have a vaccine.
You're offering
you give the real
citizens of Las Vegas to be a control group to see if your theory on social distancing works or doesn't work.
Wrong. Absolutely wrong. Don't put words in my mouth.
You just said we'll be a
was
control group.
Excuse me. What I said was I offered to be a control group, and I was told by our statistician, you can't do that because people from all parts of Southern Nevada come in to work in the city. And I said, oh, that's too bad, because I know when you have a disease, you have a placebo.
The people of Las Vegas should be aware that their representative, in that their mayor, is okay with them serving as a test group. It's amazing.
No, that interview, her comments went from dumb to insane. A placebo, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is when you do an experiment. Let's say you're testing a drug. Okay, you give the drug to a certain group, and then for a control group, you give a placebo, which means you don't give them anything. And so
like a sugar pill or something.
Right. And so you give them a pill that doesn't work, that isn't medicine. And so that's to see how many people in a situation like this, in this context, how many people would die normally when you just let the virus spread. She just volunteered her citizens to be the control group, the placebo, that die indiscriminately. I've never seen anything like that in my life. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard a so-called representative of anyone ever say. And so then that leads me to, why is she doing this? So she claims she's really, really worried about the hundreds of thousands of workers in Vegas. Now that's plausible, right? So looked into it. If she was right, if she's a Democrat and it's the unions pushing her to get back in there because they're really worried that people aren't going to have jobs, that might be an answer. No, the culinary union says, oh, hell no. No, I'm not going to put my workers back in there and get them killed. So it turns out already 11 members of the culinary union alone in Vegas have been killed already, and they shut it down pretty quickly. Imagine how many will die normally. So the unions are totally against this. She's an independent, backs Republicans all the time. I know you're shocked by that. So then you read a little further. What's the one group pushing to reopen? Wynn Resorts. So it turns out it's the casinos who want to reopen because they're, of course, worried about the money. And who does the mayor of Las Vegas work for? The people who are the donors. And the casinos are the major donors in Las Vegas. So name recognition, plus you get money from corporations, and that's how you win politics in America, because the entire system is rotten and corrupt to the core. So in a sense, Goodman is a product of that control group. And so that's why she goes out there and says insane things, because basically her backers told her, reopen those goddamn casinos. We don't care how many people die.
In our post game today, we have wonderful topics I can't wait to talk about, including an old interviewee that Cenk had on the show back in 2009. He's in the news today, and we're going to play our favorite clip from that interview and talk about the new promoted position he has. Also, a lawyer gets arrested for making death threats toward a governor. That and more, tyt.com/join to become a member. Have a great night.
Back on the Young Turks. So quick, fun, personal story. Then Anna will make fun of me in the middle of a real story. I talked on Old School about how I started daydreaming about restaurants about a week ago. Now I'm starting to daydream about locations. So when we did that Vegas story, I was like, oh, Vegas. How much would I love to be in Vegas? And then I thought about, so Carolyn Goodman, the insane mayor of Vegas, talking about reopening as quickly as possible. And I thought, what difference does it make? There's no way I would go, right? Not just now. I wouldn't go for months and months. But in fact, then I thought Vegas is probably the very last place that I would go. Because, again, everybody's touching everything. They're all in one enclosed space, and the air conditioning is refiltering all the air. So that's why going on a plane doesn't make sense, and going to Vegas, it's just a nightmare. And I have a guys trip there during the playoffs. So that's in January. I was like, Jesus, are we even going to make it by then? And then I thought, are the casinos even going to be around by then?
This is so funny. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, look, I've said it on the show 1,000 times usually in the post games about how I like to go to South Beach because I know it's not going to be around anymore soon because of climate change. But I've also talked about how I like to go to Vegas because the opulence is unsustainable. And so every time I go to Vegas, I think about what it's going to look like when it's all ruined, and when you walk through the ruins of Vegas in the desert.
Yeah.
And now maybe that's around the corner, which sucks, which is terrible.
So the reason why I'm saying this is funny, it's not, his prediction is not funny. I want to be clear about that. A lot of people would lose their jobs. I don't want that. What I find funny, though, is Cenk made this exact same prediction during the 2008 economic collapse. And I remember being on the show with him when he was explaining why he thinks that's the case. And the reason why I was saying it to me is because, like, there was a part of my life where I would go to Vegas at least, like, 3 times a year because I was obsessed with it. I had so much fun there with my friends. And I was, like, depressed when he said it, but I was like, nah, they're going to be fine. And then all the casinos seem to have recovered, but now they're hit with this pandemic. I think this pandemic's different, though, because it's one thing for the businesses to open. It's a completely different thing to expect customers to show up. And the truth is, if you look at what's happening to businesses in Wuhan, for instance, in China, they reopened a bunch of businesses, but people aren't showing up because they're scared. So you're right, Cenk. I mean, first of all, it's incredible that you're already planning your guys trip for next year, but it's probably unlikely. Oh, you were daydreaming about it.
Yeah. What are we planning? We're not planning anything, man. So this is the longest stretch I've ever gone. Like I said, to 10, 20 years of not being on a plane. It's been over 5 months I haven't been on a plane. And I don't know, maybe it'll be a year, which is unbelievable. So now I'm starting to daydream about Miami and Vegas and all these different places and how awesome it'd be to be there. But I don't know when we're ever going to be able to go to any of those places. Because especially if, like, the Georgias of the world start spiking back up, then you're like, then you can't go. You can't go anywhere. And Fauci scared the hell out of me the other day when he said it'll likely reappear in the fall. And I was like, oh no, right there. And if that's true, man, this thing's going to go on much longer than we expected. There goes football season. I'm just keeping it real, right? We have much, much bigger concerns, but I'm talking about my daydreams of the things that bring, me some degree of joy in this world. And so I don't know.
Well, I have some more news that you're not necessarily going to like, because you mentioned South Beach, Miami. I was reading an article about how the Fontainebleau Hotel is taking a giant hit, obviously. And they had an insane amount of debt to begin with, right? And then the pandemic hit. And so they're considering filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah. So a lot of people who are on the edge are going to go out. So in our context, in our industry, I'm going to be really surprised if Vice doesn't go under. So I don't know. It is it's a long, big topic. I don't want to get into it, but in terms of like why I made the prediction about Vegas back in the day during the '08 crash, and why I'm overall concerned about it, is that I know as someone who knows business, I know how much debt that these entities take on, and so if you're overall financially healthy as a company, and you're on good footing, and you don't have a lot of debt, you can survive these crises. It'll be extraordinarily difficult for almost everyone, but you can survive them. But if you're overloaded with debt and you already had a bubble, these things wind up triggering a bigger problem. I describe it as a trigger to the gun. The gun that is causing the main problem is the debt. The trigger in this case is the pandemic. So, but maybe I was wrong about their state of affairs and how much Vegas was overinflated in a bubble back then, because they survived. They survived for 12 more years. But this is a hell of a trigger. And so for the ones that really were on the edge and had overinflated and had too much debt, which private equity drives a lot of debt because they put debt on a company, they take the money out, put it in their pockets, and now a lot of those companies are then way too over indebted, and a crisis like this will knock them out, and it could start dominoes. So that's among the problems. All right, let's do more of the stories of today.
Yeah. Okay. So, retired Brigadier General and Fox News contributor Anthony Tata has been tapped as the next Pentagon policy chief. Now, he is a Trump loyalist, which is probably the reason why he's been tapped for this position. He'd have to be approved by the Senate, confirmed by the Senate. And look, I care about all of that, and we'll get to the details, but I'm going to be honest with our audience. I think honesty is important. The only reason why this story made it to the rundown today is because it involves Tata, who Cenk interviewed back in December of 2009. It was the infamous interview where this wonderful moment happened.
Brigadier General, retired Anthony Tata. He's also the author of Rogue Threat. General Tata, welcome to the Young Turks.
Hi, how are you guys doing? It's Tata, actually. It's one of those good Italian names. So,
okay. Do you go by General Tata?
I go by Tony.
It's just so good. It's so good. So
I do know why. I know why I pronounced it that way. It was subconscious, but it's funny every time. Brigadier General Anthony Tata. Because I'm going to keep it real. I once saw a movie called Bodacious Tatas. So that's why. There goes another one for Congress. Anyway, so apparently Tony has been appointed to this very important position.
Yes, he has. I'm still not done with you, though. Look, and also I'm not done with myself because at that time I was also the guest booker for TYT. So it was really my job to confirm the pronunciation of his name. And so if you watch the video carefully, there's a point where Cenk realizes that he made the mistake, but then he kind of looks off to the side. He's making eye contact with me because I'm the one who messed up, right? But it was a great moment. I have no regrets.
So Anna, I had actually after 11 years forgotten that, and I'm so glad now to be able to blame it on someone else. So thank you. I appreciate it. Yes.
All right. Well, let's get to the actual details of this story because it's just as disastrous as you would think it would be, since Trump is the person who favored Tata for this position. So Tata, my apologies. Tata is best known. Jesus, what is wrong with me? Tata is best known, according to Politico, as an avid Trump defender, as I mentioned earlier. He has been featured in Trump tweets for lauding the president on Fox News, where he has spoken out about Trump's firing of Navy Secretary Richard Spencer over the war crimes case of former Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher. and also about Trump's decision to send troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. So he was supportive of Trump deciding to send troops to the U.S.-Mexico border, and he did not agree with the firing of war criminal Eddie Gallagher. Okay, so those are some of the things that he's known for. I'm sorry?
Or the prosecution of Eddie Gallagher.
Or the prosecution. Exactly, yeah. And so Trump wanted a loyalist in this position, and that's exactly what he'll get if Tata is confirmed by the Senate.
Yeah.
And he's been in a lot of trouble in the past. I'll get to that later.
Yeah, so if you watch that interview, old interview from back then, we certainly disagreed. And so I might not have known how his name was pronounced, but I've known what Tata's about for a long time. And it's so sad that we now live in a country where the main job qualification you need to get the most important jobs in government is how much you kiss the ass of the president. And so he has been quite bodacious in doing that. And I mean, whatever crazy thing that Trump does that no one else will defend, Tata's there for him. He'll go on Fox News and be like, "Oh yeah, war criminals are awesome. What do you mean? Yeah, of course. I mean, you shouldn't prosecute war criminals." And that guy threatened to kill other Navy SEALs. And Tata, who claims, "Oh my God, I'm all about the service," was like, killing fellow Navy SEALs and threatening to do that. What's the big deal? Trump wants it. Great. Yes. Pom-poms for Tata.
No, it's incredible. But, birds of a feather. He's been in trouble himself for things that Donald Trump has been in trouble for instance. Tata retired from the Army back in 2008 after an Army probe found he'd been having affairs with at least 2 women. So Tata is... Yeah. Tata is... Anyway. I'm going to hold back. If confirmed by the Senate, by the way, Tata would replace John Rood, who was forced out in February as part of President Trump's loyalty purge after 2 years on the job. If confirmed, Tata could oversee the Pentagon's policy shop as the department reels from the coronavirus pandemic. As of Wednesday, 5,734 Department of Defense personnel and dependents have been sickened by the virus, with 25 deaths. So it's an important position, and it's terrifying to know that someone like Tata is promoted to that position.
Yeah, this is the person that sets policy for the Pentagon. That's why they have to be confirmed by the Senate. It's very relevant, and it has ramifications not just for now, but that policy then stays in place for a long time, oftentimes. So, so to take out a guy who's also very much right-wing, that was picked by Trump in the first place, but who apparently was not sufficiently loyal enough. By the way, you know what Rood's problem was? He okayed the funding for Ukraine, which, by the way, he couldn't have even imagined at the time would be later seen as disloyal to Trump. Because how did he know that Trump was going to blackmail Ukraine with that funding? But apparently, nope, you were disloyal in hindsight, so you're gone. What was Rood's position on Pentagon policy? Who cares? What's Tata's position on Pentagon policy? Who cares? No, all we care about is how much will they serve not only the ambitions, but the ego of Donald Trump. Not the policy of Donald Trump, but the ego and protection of Donald Trump. And that's how we're setting policy these days. It's gross.
Yeah, we need to elect real leaders to the White House so we can say ta-ta to Tata. I think that was a good way of wrapping it up. Oh, thank you. I'll be here all day.
Look,
all right.
Is that how a hero would wrap it up? I don't know. Hashtag, would a hero do that? I suppose. I don't know. You're just asking questions.
Okay, let's go to yet another crazy right-winger who's protesting. So Trump supporters have spent the last 3 years going after protesters, rolling back any type of rights that protesters have. There was even a time when Republican lawmakers were thinking about allowing drivers to run protesters over if they're blocking the road. Now, all of a sudden, because of coronavirus and because they're being manipulated by right-wing groups, a bunch of conservative protesters are out on the streets risking their lives, risking other people's lives. And in one video, a protester explains why he's so infuriated about what the government is doing with these stay-at-home orders.
When the government say we can't go out, that's a prohibition. It's illegal. It's against the Constitution. I'm immune compromised. I put that at risk today. Because I gotta be here.
Yeah. Are you scared to die?
No more scared than I am for anything else. Freedom!
Freedom! Prolonged lockdown basically is slavery.
I'm risking my life today.
Lockdown is basically slavery. That was really a standout quote from that compilation of people who haven't really sat down to think about whether they believe the things they say. But Cenk, jump in. What do you think?
Yeah, so a couple of layers to this. First, on the protests. We covered how many stories, and you alluded to it just now, Anna, where different states made it illegal to protest. It was unbelievable. And so if you want to protest an oil pipeline, they made that illegal. So you could be arrested for saying, hey, you know what, maybe we shouldn't put a pipeline here that's going to leak into the water and pollute the water that my kids drink. Nope, arrested, okay? And the First Amendment that the right wing claimed to cherish, they didn't give a damn about, as long as it was in the service of protecting multinational corporations. So when African Americans went to go protest being shot when they were unarmed, the right wing said, just follow the rules, okay? If you follow the rules, you don't have any problems, you lawless African Americans. And when people protested, whether it's oil pipelines or, by the way, kids locked up in cages, they said just follow the rules. If they didn't break the rules by coming in the country illegally, you wouldn't have any problems. Now they say, we're not going to follow any goddamn rules. Rules. I can't believe the governors are setting down rules. Because why? It's privilege. Rules are for you, to keep you down. The rules aren't for right-wingers. The rules aren't for these people. They think we made the rules. It's not meant to be fair. It's meant to just serve us and give us an advantage.
You're 100% right. And I couldn't help but provide evidence for our audience because I think that's important. And this isn't an old story, but it was a story that really stood out to me for how unbelievably cruel and disgusting it was. Here is Lou Dobbs commenting on a prison guard who attempted to run over protesters who were peacefully sitting in front of a detention center. They were protesting the brutal treatment of immigrants. So let's take a quick look at that.
Demonstrators blocking the entrance to a facility holding illegal immigrants. When the driver tried to pull in to the parking lot, the protesters surrounded him, yelling, banging on the hood of the truck, blocking his entrance into the facility. In jurisdictions all around the country, by the way, what they committed is assault. Trying to stop and block a vehicle is considered assault. In some instances, banging on an occupied vehicle is considered assault, which obviously the demonstrators may have committed in Rhode Island last night.
Let me be clear about something. The protesters were sitting on the ground. One of the protesters was actually in a wheelchair. They're seated on the ground, peacefully protesting. And then this guard attempts to run them over and they stand up and start surrounding his truck, right? Because I don't know, would you be a little upset if you're peacefully protesting, you're sitting on the ground and a guard tries to run you over with his truck? So Lou Dobbs thinks that type of brutal treatment, brutal response to protesters is totally fine. So I'm very curious if Lou Dobbs thinks the same thing about these people who are out on the streets right now, risking other people's lives by just protesting something that they don't even really fully understand yet. I understand that there's a portion of those protesters who are worried, they're stressed about their finances, they haven't received the type of financial relief they need, okay? And I think it's important to disaggregate that group of people. But that guy that was like yelling at the reporter about how wrong this is and this is unconstitutional and he's got, a pre-existing condition and he doesn't care, he's not afraid because he's got to go out there and just sit and think about what you're doing right now, okay? you're being manipulated and you're putting yourself and your family at risk, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I saw something in another protest that said, give me freedom or give me coronavirus. And I thought, yeah, maybe. So I don't think that's a thing that is saying what you think it's saying. So now onto the slavery sign that you guys saw in that compilation too, where the woman said this lockdown is the equivalent of slavery. Yeah, I don't think that providing health care was a hallmark of slavery. And so pretty sure that on the voyage here, preventing disease was not high on the list of the slave owners and the slave traders. So these references to slavery are so callous. So, and to them, look, I don't want to get into the gory details of slavery, which I do from time to time, because it is jarring. But the lynchings, the separations of the families, the whippings, and I'm not getting into the worst parts. So she thinks the government trying to save her life by giving her accurate information from doctors and scientists is the equivalent of that. The reason she thinks that is she's filled up to here with privilege. She thinks, I own the world. I've been told by my whole life that people that look like me own everything and we have the right to everything. So if you impinge on anything that I'm used to having by even this much, I'll go, oh my God, it's slavery. It's slavery. Can you believe they took my right away to go get a tuna fish sandwich inside the restaurant? Now I have to take it out and bring it home. Oh my God, this is like slavery. Because,
or you can just watch Mark Warner make a tuna sandwich and make one at home with way too much mayo. Sorry, I had to mention that.
I disagree with that, but that's okay. That's a different argument. So look, if these guys lived in a world where if they lived on MAGA Island and all they did was infect each other, it would still be tragic because we care about human beings. But it would be less tragic than the fact that they actually live with people that don't think like them, but the virus doesn't give a damn what your ideology is. If you have it, you can spread it to people who don't agree with you at all ad infinitum. So they endanger not just themselves, but all of us.
All right, well, one final story for you. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear refuses to prematurely open businesses in his state because he understands the importance of ensuring that things are done in a staggered fashion where people are safe and there are guidelines being followed. But there are some people in the state, including one lawyer by the name of James Gregory Troutman, who disagrees and has gone so far as to post death threats publicly in regard to Beshear and his decisions. So one of the comments that he posted was, maybe some should ask Beshear in a press conference about his thoughts on William Goebel. For those of you who don't know the history, it's a good read. And so if you don't know who Goebel is, he was the 34th governor of Kentucky. He served 4 days in 1900, and he was assassinated. So that's what he's referencing there. But he wasn't done yet. There was more. In another comment, he basically said, in another threat discussing a rally protesting the state lockdown, Troutman replied to a comment on Facebook about the governor's possible attendance, saying, with any luck, Beshear would be shot at the rally. Now, luckily, authorities looked into this and the lawyer was arrested.
Where he's now probably going to go to a facility where everybody is held indoors together. So if he wanted his freedom to be able to contract coronavirus, unfortunately, he might have gotten what he wishes for. Look, this is going to get worse and worse for a couple of reasons. I went out for a walk today, and I think people are starting to go a little bit more stir crazy. So a guy with a golf club in his front yard, I don't know what he was swinging at, but I saw another guy playing almost like hopscotch in his yard. Like, people are starting to do weirder and weirder things every time I go for a walk every new day. Because, yeah, we're starting to, get cabin fever. It's happening to all of us. And it's normal. Humans don't like to be cooped up. Problem number two is, of course, the right-wing culture that says freedom, like they all think they're Braveheart, and they don't want any of their privileges impinged. But they're not doing it to hurt you; they're doing it to save your life. But you can't talk sense to those folks. And then the third problem is the biggest one, which is soon real people are going to start running out of money. And so when you have all those things happening, and if coronavirus is not controlled, and we don't have enough testing to be able to contain the cases that pop up and their contacts, oh boy, if this thing lasts for a long time, people are going to get very antsy. Everybody's going to get antsy. The right wing is going to think it's an issue of freedom and whatever other things that they conflate it with, which are not the case. And then the folks who have no more jobs and no more money, I don't know what they're going to do. So this guy threatens the life of the governor. That's totally unacceptable. But I'm really worried that a ton of unacceptable things are headed down the pike for us.
And just to add one more devastating point, we are armed to the teeth, right? Like people went on a gun buying spree, as we learn more and more about the virus. And so, yeah, it is terrifying. And it certainly doesn't help to hear people or see people encourage others to assassinate lawmakers because they disagree with the policies. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And one other thing I just want to mention, I don't know. No, I do know. Everyone's at home. Like the stay-at-home order is still in effect here in California. There is a helicopter constantly flying over our neighborhood, constantly. Starts at 5 a.m. and it just does not stop. And it's a police helicopter. So I have no doubt that they're keeping a close eye on things because police are probably expecting, some chaotic stuff from happening.
Yeah. And I mean, look, there's bad guys who might want to stupidly take advantage of the situation. And then there are homeless people who are really desperate. And that's a different problem. And then there's going to be the newly desperate when folks run out of money. And when you have desperation and you have a situation where people are feeling agitated, got a toxic brew coming. So I don't know, man. What I've said from day one, and you guys have heard me say it 1,000 times, South Korea did a good job. They immediately test, get people that have it into quarantine. They trace their contacts, get them into quarantine. And so that's a way where you can manage the disease. If you don't have that level of sophisticated testing, a sophisticated method of testing, you're in trouble. You're flying in the dark. And we've been flying in the dark from day one. That's why we're leading the world in number of cases, leading the world in number of deaths. And like Belgium is number one in deaths per capita because they're being radically transparent and tracking the deaths in a way that is potentially more accurate and more honest about how many people have died from coronavirus. If we did that, the number of deaths would at least double from what they are now in terms of how you account for deaths. And because a lot of people die from coronavirus and they go, oh, we didn't test them. We don't know what they died from. So technically we're not going to count them. Where Belgium is saying they died in a nursing home with other people that had coronavirus. They obviously died of coronavirus even if you didn't test them. So, so Belgium isn't doing it wrong. They're just being more honest about the problem. The more honest you are, the more likely you are to fix it. So, whereas it's not a joke. It's not politics. We have a three-ring circus leader as our president. He doesn't know what he's doing at all. And so you guys are all members, not trying to score any political points. Overwhelming majority of us are like-minded. But I told you that his incompetence would be the number one problem, and here it is. And so if this keeps going and it flares back up, bad news. bad news turned into terrible news. But let's hope it doesn't happen. Let's hope that the Faucis of the world can help them get it right, get testing everywhere, ubiquitous, everywhere. And then maybe we can get it under control and open back up. But if you got these right-wingers who won't listen to anything and do it prematurely, God help us all.
All right. Sorry to end things on a pretty sad note, but sometimes the truth, it just needs to get out there. So thanks, Jane.
Yeah. All right, let's hope for the best, guys. And this coronavirus news is a roller coaster. You know, some days there's good news, some days there's terrible news. A part of the terrible news on coronavirus we didn't get to today, so here you go, is Gilead looked like they might have had a vaccine. On day one, I told you that, it's not really accurate. And it turns out today they said, yes, it hasn't really been clinically tested. And there's problems in the trials. It's not what we thought it was. So here we go back down the roller coaster. On the other hand here, let's end on a hopeful note. If we have the right amount of testing and eventually there's a vaccine, eventually it's not 2 years from now, that helps a lot less, but maybe 2 weeks, 2 months from now, somebody gets a vaccine. Okay, great. Then maybe we could reopen in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and things will go back to normal as long as we have enough testing and vaccine. So cross your fingers on science.
All right. That does it for the post-game show. Thanks, everyone.
All right. See you tomorrow.